May 18, 1871. Binghamton's courthouse square is jammed with nearly 2,000 spectators. Farmers, shopkeepers, journalists, curious women and children, all craning their necks toward the wooden gallows. The man who climbs the steps doesn't match the image of a savage murderer. He's impeccably dressed in a dark suit, posture straight, expression composed. This is the same Edward Howard Rulloff who, during years behind bars, patiently taught fellow prisoners Latin and Greek, quoting Cicero and Plato as though conducting a university seminar. The noose is fitted. The trapdoor creaks beneath his feet. In a voice clear and unhurried, Rulloff speaks his final words. The most infamous last statement in American execution history. "Hurry it up. I want to be in hell in time for dinner." A collective gasp ripples through the crowd. No trembling confession. No plea for mercy. Only cold, aristocratic contempt. As though the people below him, the law, even death itself, were beneath his notice. The executioner pulls the lever. The body drops. A sharp crack. Silence. But the story doesn't end with the swinging corpse. Within hours, surgeons at Cornell University perform an autopsy. They remove the brain and weigh it. 1,673 grams, one of the largest human brains ever recorded, surpassing even Albert Einstein's in size. Professor Bert G. Wilder carefully preserved the organ in a glass jar, where it remains to this day in Cornell's Wilder Brain Collection. That enormous gray-pink mass once housed revolutionary theories on language structure and evolution. It also meticulously planned the murders of a wife, an infant daughter, and at least one other person decades later. Edward Howard Rulloff was born around 1819 to 1820 in or near St. John, New Brunswick, Canada, to Danish immigrant parents. From childhood, he displayed an almost supernatural gift for languages. Latin, Greek, German, French. He mastered them with the ease most children learn nursery rhymes. Yet brilliance unchecked by morality is a dangerous alloy. By his early 20s, he had already crossed into crime. After working in a law office, he was convicted of embezzlement and served 2 years in prison. The experience taught him a twisted lesson. Ordinary rules were for ordinary minds. A superior intellect could bend or break them without consequence. In 1842, he slipped across the border into upstate New York and settled in the quiet village of Dryden. There he presented himself as a respectable schoolmaster, a perfect mask. While teaching, he studied botanical medicine under Dr. Henry Bull and gained intimate knowledge of poisonous plants and compounds. Through Dr. Bull, he met Harriet Shutt, the doctor's 17-year-old cousin. Harriet's family immediately distrusted the smooth, overly articulate stranger. His charm felt rehearsed, his smiles mechanical. But Harriet was enchanted by his sophistication and intellect. Against fierce family opposition, they married in 1843. The couple moved to Lansing, New York. A daughter, Priscilla, was born for a short while domestic routine appeared to steady him. Yet Rulloff's ambitions were volcanic. He dreamed aloud of becoming a celebrated university professor, of publishing paradigm-shifting works on philology and philosophy, of earning the acclaim his genius deserved. He repeatedly pressed Harriet to relocate to Ohio, convinced greater opportunities awaited there. Harriet, now tied to her family and newborn child, refused to uproot their lives again. To Rulloff, this was not mere disagreement. It was an intolerable challenge to his superior judgment. How could someone so intellectually beneath him dare contradict him? Neighbors began noticing cracks. Rulloff's once effortless charm grew brittle. Harriet withdrew, often appearing with unexplained bruises. The baby seemed constantly unwell and fretful. The breaking point came on the evening of June 22, 1844. Another heated argument over Ohio. Harriet stood firm. In a surge of fury, Rulloff accused her of infidelity with Dr. Bull. As she worked in the kitchen, pounding peppercorns with a heavy iron pestle, he snatched the tool from her hands and brought it crashing down on her skull. She collapsed instantly, blood spreading across the floorboards. 3-month-old Priscilla began crying in her crib. Rulloff later admitted he gave her something to make her stop crying. The infant never cried again. Instead of horror or remorse, his mind shifted gears. Analytical problem-solving. 2 bodies. A crime scene. Evidence to eliminate. The next morning, he approached neighbors, the Andersons, with a calm request. Could he borrow their horse and wagon to return a wooden chest to his uncle? They watched as he loaded the chest and a heavy, lumpy sack into the wagon. He said he was heading east. They saw him drive west, toward Cayuga Lake. Hours later, he returned. The chest remained. The sack did not. He was remarkably cheerful. He told people he and Harriet would be traveling for several weeks. For days, he maintained performance flawlessly, teaching school, conversing normally, showing no distress. His ability to compartmentalize was extraordinary, discussing literature by day while knowing two bodies lay submerged in the lake's dark water by night. Harriet's family grew alarmed when no word arrived. They visited the house and found it in disarray. Harriet's clothes, jewelry, and personal items untouched, things she would never abandon voluntarily. Rulloff's explanations shifted and contradicted. First she had left him, then they had moved to Ohio together. None made sense. Realizing the net was closing, he fled. But Harriet's brother Ephraim Shutt organized a relentless pursuit, driven by grief and certainty. Eventually, Rulloff was captured and returned to Ithaca for trial. The prosecution's problem: no bodies have been recovered from Cayuga Lake despite extensive dragging. Rulloff chose to represent himself, supremely confident his intellect could dismantle the case. His argument was brutally elegant. Without proof of death, how could murder be proven? The jury, influenced by his persuasive oratory and the absence of corpses, reached a compromise verdict. Unable to convict on murder, they found him guilty of kidnapping his wife. In 1846, he was sentenced to 10 years in Auburn State Prison. Prison, far from breaking him, became an intellectual haven. He immersed himself in philology, the scientific study of language origins and development. He believed he had uncovered fundamental principles overlooked by the academic world. He planned to publish his findings as a groundbreaking work that would secure his fame. Officials, impressed by his abilities, granted rare privileges. He taught Latin and Greek to other inmates, holding classes in his own cell. The irony was stark. The same mind that had orchestrated his family's deaths was now celebrated for scholarly promise. As his release date approached, authorities informed him new murder charges for Priscilla would be filed immediately upon freedom. Rulloff launched a sophisticated legal defense from prison, invoking double jeopardy. Prosecutors, recognizing the strength of his argument regarding Harriet, dropped their case but refiled for the infant, who had never been part of the original kidnapping charge. In 1858, he was convicted of murdering his daughter and sentenced to hang. Yet connections he had cultivated paid off. With possible help from Albert Jarvis, the undersheriff's son, whom he had tutored in classics, Rulloff escaped before execution. He fled westward on foot, surviving on stolen food and foraged nuts, losing 2 toes to frostbite. In Mahoopany, often spelled Melville, Pennsylvania, he reinvented himself as James Nelson. His encyclopedic knowledge of geology, biology, even early forensic science, impressed local inventor A.B. Richmond, who offered him a business partnership. For the first time, Rulloff tasted the respect he believed he deserved. Then came the pinnacle. Jefferson College in southwestern Pennsylvania offered him a professorship, the academic position he had craved his entire life. Legitimate recognition seemed within reach, but the past refused to stay buried. Albert Jarvis and his mother, now destitute, contacted him with blackmail demands, money or exposure of his true identity. Rather than finding a lawful solution or risking exposure by refusal, Rulloff chose robbery. He held up a jewelry store to pay them off. He was caught and extradited back to New York. Astonishingly, through skillful appeals and prosecutorial fatigue, he secured release once more. He reunited with Jarvis in New York City. Together with another partner, William Dexter, they became professional burglars. Even in prison again, 1861, Rulloff continued his linguistic work. In 1869, he submitted a paper titled Method in the Formation of Language to the first convention of the American Philological Association, under the pseudonym Professor Uri Lariot. He demanded $500,000 for his discoveries. The academic community rejected it outright. No bids, no interest. His last hope for legitimate greatness died. With scholarly dreams crushed, He turned wholly to crime. Along with Jarvis and Dexter, he planned what he considered the perfect robbery, a dry goods store in Binghamton, New York. Clerks Frederick Merrick and Gilbert Burroughs slept in rooms above the shop. The strategy was clinical. Use chloroform to keep the clerks unconscious while looting the store below. Rulloff studied the building, timed routines, calculated every variable. He was certain it was foolproof. Overconfidence proved fatal. Just after midnight on August 17th, 1870, the three men entered. Jarvis stumbled, waking Merrick. The clerk grabbed a pistol. It misfired. He hurled a wooden stool. Chaos erupted. Burroughs seized Dexter and began beating him. Rulloff and Jarvis rushed to help. Rulloff fired warning shots into the ceiling. Merrick refused to stop. In that instant, Rulloff aimed directly at Merrick's head and fired. The clerk died instantly. This murder had witnesses. No cover-up, no time to hide evidence. In their panic flight, the trio missed their getaway boat across the Chenango River. They tried to swim. Jarvis and Dexter, exhausted and weighed down, drowned. Rulloff reached the other side. Some later speculated he deliberately let his partners sink to eliminate witnesses. The manhunt was immediate. Burroughs gave detailed descriptions. The next morning, Rulloff panicked at a railroad station when officers asked for identification. He fled across tracks and hid in a farm outhouse, an undignified finale. Captured, he gave false names. Brought before the bodies of Jarvis and Dexter, he claimed he didn't know them. Judge Ransom Balcom stepped forward. "You're Edward H. Rulloff. You murdered your wife and child in Lansing in 1845. He added a prophetic warning. "This man understands his rights better than you do and will defend them to the last." The trial opened January 4th, 1871, and became a national sensation. Crowds of 2,000 gathered daily. Rulloff again defended himself, wielding legal knowledge like a weapon. Public debate raged. Some intellectuals, including newspaper editor Horace Greeley, argued that a mind so gifted should be spared execution. Mark Twain responded with savage satire, offering to find a substitute to confess and die in Rulloff's place. On March 3rd, 1871, the verdict, guilty, death. While awaiting execution, Rulloff finally confessed to Harriet's murder in chilling, precise detail. He never admitted killing Priscilla, carrying that secret to the grave. On the gallows, his arrogance never wavered. Whether his exact words were the infamous dinner line or the simpler, "I can't stand still," they captured a lifetime of defiant superiority. After death, the brain was removed, measured, and preserved. Today it sits in its jar at Cornell, a haunting exhibit labeled with clinical detachment. Edward Rulloff's life forces uncomfortable questions that linger more than 150 years later. What is the true relationship between intelligence and morality? Can exceptional gifts ever excuse monstrous acts? How can the same mind hold revolutionary insight and utter cruelty? His preserved brain, larger than nearly any on record, remains a silent, floating accusation. Brilliance without conscience does not produce scholars or benefactors. It produces monsters. The fate of little Priscilla is still unknown. Did he truly kill her? Or did he somehow place her with another identity? That mystery endures. What is certain is this: Edward Howard Rulloff, possessor of one of history's largest brains, used his extraordinary gift not to elevate humanity, but to destroy lives close to him and far beyond. His legacy is not the academic glory he craved. It is a stark, enduring warning. Intelligence without empathy may be the most lethal force of all. Somewhere in a quiet Cornell laboratory, in a jar of clear fluid, that massive brain continues to pose its unspoken question across the centuries. If genius does not guarantee goodness, what does?